I stood on that porch staring at a door I paid for, realizing the hardest part wasn't being pushed out, it was being replaced. You expect strangers to hurt you? You don't expect your own child to plan it. This story is inspired by real-life submissions. Names and identifying details have been changed. I stood on my own porch at 7 in the morning, staring at a lock I didn't recognize. My suitcase sat next to me on the damp wood, clothes I'd folded for 40 years now, wrinkled and deuced. The faded blue pillowcase I'd grabbed in a panic last night poked out from the zipper. Everything I'd taken with me fit in one bag, because Olivia had said it was just for today. Just for today. I tried my key again. It slid into the slot, then stopped. Wrong lock. Wrong life. The door opened before I could knock. Olivia stood there in her robe, coffee mug in hand, looking at me like I was a door-to-door salesman who'd come too early. Behind her, I could see Caleb at the kitchen table. My son? He glanced up, then back down at his phone. Abigail, Olivia said, her voice soft, patient. The voice you'd use with a confused child? I thought we'd talked about this. We hadn't talked about anything. She'd handed me a suitcase and said I needed to stay somewhere else. Just for today. A cooling-off period, she'd called it. Caleb had stood behind her, nodding. Like he'd already agreed to everything. I live here, I said. You're getting confused again. She stepped forward, pulling the door half closed behind her. Remember? We agreed you'd stay with Margaret for a bit. Just until things settle. I didn't remember agreeing to anything. I remembered Olivia's tight smile and Caleb's silence and the sick feeling in my stomach as I'd carried my own suitcase out the front door of the house I'd lived in for 30 years. But I'd convinced myself it was temporary. A misunderstanding. One night away, and we'd fix whatever this was. Now the lock was changed. Where are my things? I asked. She gestured to the porch. 3 cardboard boxers, sealed with packing tape. My name written in Sharpie on the side. Like storage. Like I was already gone. We packed up your room, Olivia said. It's better this way. Less stress for everyone. Less stress. I felt my chest tighten. I need to get my medications, I said. And my documents. We'll bring them by Margaret's later, Olivia said. Caleb's handling everything. You don't need to worry about the paperwork anymore. I heard what she didn't say. You can't handle it. You're too old. You don't understand how things work anymore. I wanted to push past her, walk into my own kitchen, sit at my own table. But something in her stance told me she wouldn't move. And Caleb wouldn't either. So I picked up my suitcase, left the boxers on the porch, walked back to Margaret's car. At the pharmacy on Willow Street, my card declined. I tried it twice. The cashier, a young woman with kind eyes, ran it through again. Declined. She suggested I call my bank. I stepped outside, hands shaking, and dialed the customer service number printed on the back. The automated voice told me my account had been flagged for unusual activity. What kind of activity? I asked when I finally reached a real person. I'm seeing several login attempts from a different location last night, the representative said, and 2 requests for credit line increases. Around 2:00 a.m. I'd been lying awake in Margaret's guest room, staring at the ceiling. I didn't make those requests, I said. I understand, ma'am. We'll need you to come into a branch to verify your identity and secure the account. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Someone had been in my accounts while I was locked out of my house. While Caleb was handling everything, I drove back to Margaret's. She met me at the door, her face pale. Abby, she said, you need to see something. She pulled up her phone, showed me the footage from her Ring camera, the one that faces the street, the one that had a clear view of my house last night. Caleb's car, parked in the driveway. Caleb, walking quickly to his trunk, arms full of folders. My folders. The ones I kept in the drawer by my bed. Birth certificate. Social Security card, bank statements, insurance policies. The timestamp said 11:47 p.m. He'd gone back into the house. My house. After I'd left. And he'd taken my documents. Margaret's voice was quiet. What's he doing with those, Abby? I didn't know. But the bank had flagged my account at 2A.M, and now I couldn't get into my own house. And my son wouldn't look me in the eye. The phone rang. Caleb's name lit up the screen. I answered. Mom, he said, and his voice had that practiced patience. Olivia told me you came by. I know this is hard, but we're doing what's best. You're not thinking clearly right now. Not thinking clearly. Where are my documents? I asked. A pause. They're safe. I'm organizing everything. You know how you get confused with all the paperwork? I looked at the timestamp on Margaret's phone, looked at the image of my son, arms full of my life, walking away in the dark. I want them back, I said. We'll talk about it later, Caleb said. When you're calmer. He hung up. Margaret was watching me, her hand on my shoulder. What do you need? She asked. I thought about the declined card, the midnight login attempts, the changed locks, the folders in Caleb's trunk. I need to go to the bank, I said, in person. And I needed to know exactly what my son had done while I was spending the night away from my own home. Because Olivia had said it was just for today. But something told me they'd never planned on letting me back in at all. Margaret's guest room smelled like lavender and old books. I'd spent the whole night staring at the ceiling, telling myself it was just a misunderstanding. Just for today, Olivia had said. By morning, we'd laugh about it. Caleb would apologize. I'd go home. I'd actually believed that. Now, sitting on Margaret's couch with cold coffee in my hands, I couldn't stop replaying the moment. The way Olivia had handed me that suitcase, already packed. The way Caleb had stood behind her, silent, not defending me, not even looking at me. My phone buzzed. A text from Olivia. We need to finalize some documents. Please have everything ready by Friday. You missed too many deadlines. Abigail, we're trying to help. I read it 3 times. We need to finalize. Not asking, telling. And that line about missing deadlines? Like I was the problem? Like I was the one who couldn't keep track of my own life? I'd paid every bill on time for 40 years. I'd raised Caleb alone after his father left. I'd never missed a deadline in my life. Until now, apparently. Margaret leaned over my shoulder, read the text, and made a small sound in her throat. What documents is she talking about? I don't know, I said. And that was the terrifying part. I didn't know what Caleb had taken from my drawer. I didn't know what they were planning to finalize. My phone rang. The bank's customer service number. I answered, and a recorded message started playing. This is a courtesy call regarding your account ending in 4782. We've detected an attempted change to your credit limit. Please call us immediately to verify this request. The message had come in at 3A.M. while I was lying awake in Margaret's guest room. Someone was trying to access my credit. I felt sick. Margaret was already pulling up her laptop. We're calling the bank. Right now. I dialed the local branch. The one on Maple, where I'd been banking for 23 years. Where they knew my name? Willow Creek Bank. This is Denise speaking. Denise, it's Abigail Hartwell. My voice shook. I got a message about my account. Someone tried to change my credit limit last night. A pause. Computer keys clicking. Yes, Mrs. Hartwell. I'm seeing that here. The request came through around 2:40 a.m. It required identity verification, but someone attempted to validate using your social security number and date of birth. I didn't make that request, I said. I understand. The system flagged it because there was no notarized power of attorney on file. We'll need you to come in person to secure the account and review the activity. What else happened? I asked. What else did they try? More clicking. A longer pause. There was also an attempt to transfer funds from your savings to checking, and a request to add an authorized user to your account. My hands went numb. Who? I can't give you that information over the phone, Mrs. Hartwell, but I can tell you that all requests were denied pending verification. Can you come in today? Yes, I said. I'll be there in an hour. I hung up. Margaret was staring at me, her face pale. They tried to add someone to your account, she said. At 3 in the morning, I thought about Caleb's car in my driveway, the folders in his arms, the timestamp. 11:47 p.m. he'd taken my documents, and 4 hours later, someone had tried to use them. My phone rang again. Caleb. I let it ring twice before answering. Mom, listen. His voice was tight, controlled. Olivia told me you're upset, but you need to calm down. We're handling everything because you get confused at night. Remember when you called me at 2 a.m. last month, saying you couldn't find your checkbook? It was in your purse the whole time. I did remember that. I'd been half asleep, panicking over nothing. But this wasn't nothing. Where are my documents, Caleb? They're safe. I told you, I'm organizing them. You've got bills scattered everywhere, accounts you don't even remember opening. It's too much for you to manage alone anymore. Then why didn't you ask me? I said, why did you take them in the middle of the night? Silence. Then, carefully, I didn't want to stress you out. You know how you get overwhelmed? There it was again. That patient voice, like I was a child who couldn't be trusted with sharp objects. Someone tried to access my bank account last night, I said. At 3 a.m. Another pause. Longer this time. That's probably just fraud, Caleb said. It happens all the time. I'll help you sort it out after you took my social security card. Mom? His voice changed. Harder now. You're not making sense. I'm trying to help you, and you're acting paranoid. Maybe we need to talk about other options. For your care. Other options. The words hung in the air like a threat. Margaret grabbed my hand, shook her head. Mouthed. Don't engage. I have to go, I said. Wait, Mom, I hung up. For a long moment, I just sat there, shaking. Other options for your care? He'd said it so casually. Like it was inevitable. Like I was already gone. Margaret's voice was quiet. Abby, I need to show you something else. She pulled up the Ring camera footage again. Scrolled forward to 1:15 a.m., Caleb's car, still in the driveway. The living room light on. He didn't leave, Margaret said. Not until almost 2. What was he doing in there for 2 hours? I didn't want to know, but I had to. He was going through everything, I said. Looking for account numbers, passwords, anything he could use. Margaret's hand tightened on mine. You need a lawyer, Abby? I thought about Caleb's voice on the phone. Other options for your care? I thought about Olivia's text. You missed too many deadlines. They were building a narrative. Confused old woman. Can't manage her own affairs. Needs help whether she wants it or not. And they had my documents to prove it. I need to go to the bank first, I said. I need to see exactly what they tried to do. Margaret nodded, grabbed her keys. As we drove toward Maple Street, my phone buzzed again. Another text from Olivia. Caleb says you're being difficult. We're just trying to help, Abigail. Stop making this harder than it needs to be. I stared at the message. At that word, difficult. I wasn't being difficult. I was being evicted from my own life. And somewhere in those folders Caleb had taken, somewhere in those midnight login attempts, was the proof of exactly how far they were willing to go. I just had to find it before they erased it completely. The Willow Creek bank branch sat on the corner of Maple and 3rd, the same brick building where I'd opened my first checking account in 2002. Denise had helped me that day too. Back when Caleb was still in college, still calling every Sunday. Now I was walking through those same glass doors to find out if my own son had tried to steal from me. Denise met me at the counter, her face serious. She led Margaret and me to a small office in the back, the kind with frosted glass and a door that actually closed. "Mrs. Hartwell," she said, pulling up my account on her computer. "I want to walk you through exactly what happened last night." She turned the screen toward me. A log of activity, timestamps. In military time, 2:41. Login attempt from IP address 198.51.100.47. 2:43. Credit limit increase request. $25,000. 2:47. Transfer authorization request. Savings to checking. $18,500. 2:52 AD. Authorized user request denied. No notarized POA on file 303. Password reset attempt denied. Security questions failed. I stared at the times. At the amounts. $18,000. That was almost everything in my savings. "Where is that IP address from?" Margaret asked. Denise clicked something. "It's registered to a residential address here in Willow Creek." She paused, glanced at me. "Do you want me to read it?" I already knew, but I nodded anyway. 427 Oakmont Drive. Caleb's house. My house. The house I'd been locked out of 12 hours ago. "Someone was using your Wi-Fi network," Denise said quietly. "And they had enough personal information to attempt all of these transactions. But they didn't succeed," I said. My voice sounded hollow. "No. Our fraud detection system flagged it because there's no power of attorney on file. And the requests came from an unusual location at an unusual time. But Mrs. Hartwell," she leaned forward, "this wasn't random fraud. This was someone who knew your social security number, your mother's maiden name, your date of birth. This was someone who had access to your documents." I thought about the Ring camera footage. Caleb, walking to his car with my folders. The ones I kept locked in my bedside drawer. "What do I do?" I asked. Denise pulled out a stack of forms. "First, we file a formal fraud report. Then we freeze your accounts temporarily while we investigate. I'm also going to recommend you place a credit freeze with all 3 bureaus. And ... double quotes, she hesitated. You might want to speak with an attorney about elder financial abuse." Elder financial abuse. The words made my stomach turn. "He's my son," I said. "I know." Denise's voice was gentle. "But the pattern is clear. And if we don't document this now, if they try again, ... double quotes, she didn't finish. She didn't have to." Margaret's hand found mine across the desk. "Show her the camera footage," she said. I pulled out my phone, opened the video Margaret had forwarded me. Watched Denise's face as she saw Caleb carrying those folders, the timestamp matching perfectly with the bank activity. "That's 4 hours before the login attempts," Denise said. "He took your documents, and then someone used them. He said he was organizing my paperwork." I said, "That I get confused?" Denise's expression didn't change, but something hardened in her eyes. "Mrs. Hartwell, I've been your banker for over 20 years. You've never missed a payment. You've never bounced a check. You're one of the most organized clients I have." She tapped the screen. "This isn't confusion. This is theft." The word hung in the air. Theft. My phone buzzed. Another text from Olivia. "Stop embarrassing yourself at the bank. Caleb told me what you're accusing him of. You don't remember things correctly anymore, Abigail. We're trying to protect you from yourself." I showed it to Denise. She read it, then looked at me. "Do you want me to print all of this? The activity logs? The timestamps? Everything?" "Yes," I said. She started printing, page after page of evidence. Times, dates, amounts, IP addresses. Every attempt, every failed security question, every red flag the system had caught. "One more thing," Denise said, handing me the stack. I pulled the voicemail log. You received 3 automated fraud alerts last night? At 2:45, 2:50, and 3:05. Did you get those? I checked my phone. No voicemails. Nothing. Someone deleted them, Margaret said. Or, Denise said carefully, someone had access to your voicemail and cleared them before you could hear them. I felt cold. Caleb had set up my voicemail years ago. He'd insisted on it, said he wanted to make sure I didn't miss important calls. He knew my password. Can you recover them? I asked. I can request the recordings from our system, Denise said. But it'll take a few days. A few days. How much could they do in a few days? My phone rang. Caleb again. I stared at his name on the screen. Don't answer, Margaret said. Not yet. But I needed to hear his voice. Needed to know if he'd lie to me directly. I answered. Mom. He sounded exhausted. Frustrated. Olivia told me you're at the bank making a scene. This is exactly what we were worried about. You're paranoid. You're accusing me of things that didn't happen, and you're embarrassing yourself. Someone tried to transfer $18,000 out of my account last night, I said. From your house. Silence. Then, that's impossible. You must be reading it wrong. Banks make mistakes all the time. I'm looking at the printout right now, Caleb. The IP address is yours. The time is 3A.m. 4 hours after you took my documents. I didn't take anything. I borrowed some paperwork to help you organize. That's not the same thing. Without asking me. Because you would have said no. His voice rose, then dropped again. Controlled. Mom, listen to yourself. You're not making sense. Maybe we need to schedule that doctor's appointment we talked about. What doctor's appointment? For your memory. Olivia and I have been discussing it. We think it's time to get you evaluated. There it was. The real plan. Get me declared incompetent. Take control. Make everything legal. I'm not confused, I said. And I'm not signing anything. You don't have a choice, Caleb said quietly. If you can't manage your own affairs, someone has to. And I'm your son. I'm your next of kin. I'm the one who has to clean up this mess. I hung up. Denise was watching me, her expression unreadable. Mrs. Hartwell, I need to be very clear about something. If what you're telling me is true, if your son is attempting to access your accounts without authorization and is trying to have you declared incompetent, you need legal protection. Today. I don't know any lawyers. I said. I do. She wrote something on a post-it note, slid it across the desk. Martin Reese. Elder law. Tell him I sent you, and tell him it's urgent. I looked at the name, at the phone number, at the stack of printouts in my hands. What if Caleb's right? I asked. What if I am confused? Are you confused right now? Denise asked. No. Were you confused when you balanced your checkbook last month? No. Then you're not the problem. She tapped the printouts. This is the problem. And it's not going away on its own. Margaret stood, pulling me up with her. We're calling that lawyer. Right now. As we walked out of the bank, I looked down at the evidence in my hands. Timestamps that told a story I didn't want to believe. My son, taking my documents. My son, or someone he trusted, trying to drain my accounts in the middle of the night. My phone buzzed one more time. Olivia, you're making this so much worse. Abigail, when are you going to understand that we're the only ones trying to help you? I didn't respond. Because I finally understood something else. They weren't trying to help me. They were trying to erase me. And I had exactly one chance to stop them before they succeeded. Martin Reese's office smelled like old leather and coffee. The kind of place that felt solid, permanent. Like the walls had seen worse than my story and were still standing. I spread the bank printouts across his desk. The Ring camera screenshots. The voicemail log showing 3 deleted alerts. Everything Denise had given me, organized in a manila folder that Margaret had labeled in neat handwriting, evidence. Martin was in his 60s, gray hair, reading glasses perched on his nose. He studied each page without speaking, making small notes on a legal pad. Finally, he looked up. Mrs. Hartwell, how long have you lived at 427 Oakmont Drive? 30 years? I bought it after my divorce. And the deed is in your name. Yes. Only mine. He made another note. Has your son ever had power of attorney over your finances or medical decisions? No. He's never asked, and I've never given it. Good. Martin tapped the bank statements. Because what I'm seeing here is a clear pattern of financial exploitation. The timing alone is damning. He removes you from the home, changes the locks, takes your documents, and within hours someone attempts to access your accounts using information only available in those documents. Hearing him say it out loud made it real. Not paranoia. Not confusion. Real. What can I do? I asked. Several things. First, we file a fraud alert with the credit bureaus and freeze your credit. Second, we send a formal notice to your son demanding return of all documents and cessation of any financial activity. Third, double quotes. He paused. We may need to seek a restraining order and file for emergency relief to secure your access to the home. A restraining order? Against my son? If he's preventing you from accessing your own property and attempting financial exploitation? Yes. Martin's voice was gentle but firm. I know this is difficult. But right now, we need to protect your assets and your rights before more damage is done. My phone buzzed. I glanced down. Olivia. Lawyers just confuse elderly people and take their money. You don't need this, Abigail. Come home and we'll talk like adults. I showed Martin the text. He read it, his mouth tightening into a thin line. That's textbook manipulation, he said. She's trying to isolate you from anyone who might help. Classic abuse pattern. He handed me back my phone. Don't respond. Not yet. Let me handle communication from here. What if they do something else while we're waiting? I asked. What if they try again? That's why we move fast. He picked up his desk phone, dialed. Linda, I need you to prepare an emergency petition for civil standby and document recovery. And pull a copy of the deed for 427 Oakmont Drive. He hung up, looked back at me. We're going to the county clerk's office this afternoon. I want to verify the property records and make sure nothing's been filed without your knowledge. Something cold settled in my stomach. You think they might have tried to change the deed? I think they've shown a willingness to act without your consent, and we need to verify everything. The house, your accounts, any insurance policies, your will if you have one. My will is in my bedside drawer, I said, then stopped. Was in my bedside drawer? Martin wrote something else down. We'll add that to the list of documents we're demanding back. Margaret leaned forward. What about the Ring camera footage? The timestamps match the bank activity exactly? That's excellent evidence, Martin said. It establishes opportunity and intent. Mrs. Hartwell, I'm going to ask you something difficult. If this goes to court, if we need to prove financial abuse, are you prepared to testify against your son? The question hit me like a fist. Testify. Against Caleb. The boy I'd raised alone. The one I'd worked 2 jobs to put through college. But I thought about the changed locks. The deleted voicemails. $18,000 they'd tried to take while I slept in someone else's house? Yes, I said. Martin nodded. Then let's build an airtight case. Because they're going to fight back, and they're going to use your age against you. We need documentation that shows you're competent, aware, and acting in your own defense. How do we do that? You're doing it right now. You sought help from the bank. You saved evidence. You came to an attorney. You're making clear, rational decisions to protect yourself. He tapped the folder. This isn't the behavior of someone who's confused or incompetent. This is someone who knows exactly what's happening and is taking appropriate action. If this is hitting close to home, Stay with me. And if you'd like more stories like this, subscribing really helps. Because what happened next changed everything. Martin's assistant came in with a thick file. The deed to my house, pulled from county records. Martin opened it, scanned the first page, then went very still. What? I asked. What is it? He turned the document toward me, pointing to a line near the bottom. There's a notation here. Filed 2 weeks ago. A request to add a coner to the deed. My hands went numb. Who? Caleb Hartwell. Your son? Martin flipped to the next page. The request was denied because it required your signature and notarization, which weren't provided. But Mrs. Hartwell, he tried. 2 weeks before he locked you out, he tried to add himself to your deed. Margaret grabbed my hand. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't sudden, Martin said quietly. This was planned. He's been working on this for at least 2 weeks, possibly longer. The lockout was just the execution phase. I thought about Olivia's texts. The suitcase already packed. Caleb standing silent behind her. Just for today. They'd never planned to let me back in. What happens now? I asked. Martin closed the file. Now we go on offense. I'm filing an emergency petition today. We're going to get a court order allowing you supervised access to retrieve your documents and personal property. We're going to send certified letters demanding cessation of all financial activity. And we're going to make it very clear that any further attempts will result in criminal charges. Will that work? It'll slow them down. And it'll create a legal record. If they violate the order, they're in contempt. If they try anything else, it's additional evidence of a pattern. He stood up. But I need you to do something for me. What? Don't contact your son. Don't respond to texts. Don't answer calls. Every interaction gives them ammunition to claim you're unstable or difficult. Let me be the buffer. My phone rang. Caleb's name lit up the screen. I stared at it, let it ring, watched it go to voicemail. Good, Martin said. That's exactly right. We spent the next hour at the courthouse, filing paperwork. Emergency petition for access. Fraud report. Request for preservation of records. Each form another piece of armor, another wall between me and whatever Caleb was planning. When we finally left, the sun was setting. Margaret drove me back to her house, both of us quiet. My phone buzzed. A notification from the bank. Account activity alert. I opened it with shaking hands. Someone had just attempted to log into my account again. From the same IP address? Caleb's house. Despite the lawyer? Despite everything. They were still trying. And now I knew this wasn't going to end with a conversation or an apology. This was going to end in court. The Willow Creek bank branch opened at 9. I was there at 8:45. Martin beside me, both of us holding coffee that had gone cold in the car. Denise unlocked the door early, her face tight when she saw us. Mrs. Hartwell. Mr. Reese. Come in. She led us to the same back office, closed the door, pulled up my account without being asked. It happened again last night. 3 more attempts. Martin leaned forward. Walk us through it. She turned the screen. More tons dumps. More failed requests. 11:47 p.m. login attempt. Same IP address as before. That's Caleb's house, I said quietly. Las 12 itas alto m. Password reset attempt using security questions. Failed. 12:15 a.m. request to add authorized signer. Denied. No notarized power of attorney. 3 attempts in 30 minutes. After the lawyer? After the court filing? After everything. There's something else, Denise said. She pulled up another screen. This morning, I reviewed the full account history going back 6 months. There's a pattern I missed before. She highlighted a series of small transactions. $5 here, $10 there, spread out over weeks. These are test transactions, Martin said immediately. Denise nodded. Someone was checking to see if they had access. Small enough not to trigger alerts. frequent enough to establish a pattern. Then last week, they escalated. She showed us larger attempts, $50, $100, all denied because they required secondary authorization. How far back does this go? I asked. First test transaction was April 7th, 4 months ago. 4 months. Long before the lockout. Long before the suitcase. They'd been planning this since spring. My stomach turned. I didn't see any of this on my statements. Because these were attempts, not completed transactions, Denise said. They don't show up unless you request a fraud activity report, which most people never do. Martin was taking notes, his hand moving fast across the page. Can you print everything? Every attempt? Every timestamp? Every IP address? Already done? Denise handed him a thick folder. I pulled the full forensic report this morning. Every login, every device, every location. And Mr. Reese, there's something you need to see. She opened a different file. We keep logs of physical branch visits tied to account inquiries. On April 9th, 2 days after the first test transaction, someone came into this branch asking questions about Mrs. Hartwell's accounts. Who? I asked, though I already knew. A woman named Olivia Hartwell. She said she was your daughter-in-law. Said you'd asked her to help manage your finances because you were having trouble keeping track. She wanted to know about adding herself as a cosigner. The room tilted. What did you tell her? I explained we'd need you present with notarized authorization. She seemed frustrated, said you were being difficult about accepting help. She left empty-handed. Denise looked at me. I made a note in your file. Standard procedure when family members ask unusual questions. Martin was already writing. This establishes premeditation. They've been working on access for months, testing the system, trying to find vulnerabilities. They were patient, Denise said. Methodical. If our security protocols weren't so strict, they might have succeeded. I thought about Olivia's texts. The ones calling me difficult, confused, paranoid. She'd been saying it for months, building a narrative. What about the attempts after the court filing? Martin asked. After I sent the cease and desist letter, Denise pulled up last night's activity. The IP address is the same. But look at this. She pointed to a line of code I didn't understand. The device fingerprint changed. The first attempts came from a laptop. Last night's attempts came from a mobile phone. They're getting desperate, Martin said. Switching devices, trying different approaches. My phone buzzed. I pulled it out. Caleb. Mom, we need to talk. Face to face. This lawyer is filling your head with paranoid nonsense. I'm your son. I would never hurt you. Please. I showed Martin. He read it, his expression unchanging. Don't respond. He sounds upset, I said. He's upset because he's losing control, Martin said. That message isn't about reconnecting. It's about regaining access to you. Once he gets you alone, without witnesses, he'll try to convince you to fire me and drop the case. Another buzz. Olivia this time. This is getting ridiculous, Abigail. You're tearing this family apart over a misunderstanding. Caleb is trying to help and you're treating him like a criminal. Shame on you. Shame on me. For protecting myself. For believing the timestamps and the evidence instead of their words. Can I use these messages? I asked Martin. Absolutely. They're attempting to intimidate you into dropping legal protection. That's consciousness of guilt. He turned to Denise. I need one more thing. Can you confirm whether there's been any attempt to close or transfer these accounts? Denise clicked through screens. Stopped. Yes. Yesterday afternoon? A phone call requesting account closure and wire transfer to an external account? The caller claimed to be Mrs. Hartwell. But it wasn't me, I said. I know. The security questions failed, but they tried. Martin closed his folder, looked at me. Mrs. Hartwell, I need you to understand something. This isn't a family dispute anymore. This is systematic financial exploitation with clear intent. If we don't stop them now, they will find a way in. What's the next step? I asked. We go back to court. Today, with this new evidence, I'm requesting an emergency hearing and a temporary restraining order. They need to be legally barred from contacting you or accessing anything connected to your finances. They're going to fight, I said. Let them. Because now we have documentation showing a 4-month pattern of escalating attempts, multiple devices, continued activity despite legal warning, and attempts to impersonate you. He tapped the folder. This isn't he said she said anymore. This is data. And data doesn't lie. Denise handed me one more paper. Mrs. Hartwell, I'm also placing a mandatory flag on your account. Any future activity, from any device, from any location, requires in-person verification with photo ID. Nothing can happen without you physically present. They can't access anything. I asked. Not anymore. For the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe. But then my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered without thinking. Hello, Mrs. Hartwell. A woman's voice, professional, cold. This is Rebecca Chun from Westside Elder Care Services. Your son Caleb contacted us about arranging a full cognitive evaluation and discussing residential care options. We have an opening tomorrow at 2. Will you be available? I looked at Martin. His face had gone hard. Who authorized this call? He asked, taking my phone. I'm sorry, who is this? Martin Reese, Mrs. Hartwell's attorney. She did not request an evaluation, and any communication about her care needs to go through me. A pause. Oh, Mr. Hartwell said his mother had agreed to this, and he was just handling the scheduling. Mr. Hartwell does not have authority to schedule anything on her behalf, Martin said. Remove her from your call list immediately. He hung up, looked at me. They're trying to get you declared incompetent, he said. If they can't access your money directly, they'll try to get legal guardianship. We need that hearing today. We left the bank with 2 folders of evidence, a timeline spanning 4 months, and proof that even now, even after everything, they were still trying to take control. And I finally understood. This wasn't going to stop until a judge made it stop. I stood on my own porch for the second time in 3 days. This time, Martin was beside me. And this time, I had papers in my hand. The temporary court order, signed by Judge Brennan an hour ago. Black ink on white paper, official seal at the bottom. It said I had the right to supervised entry to retrieve my documents and personal property. It said this was still my house. I knocked, waited. The living room curtain moved. Olivia's face appeared, then disappeared. The door opened 6 inches. The chain lock held. You can't be here, Olivia said through the gap. Her voice was tight. This is harassment. Martin held up the court order. Mrs. Hartwell has legal authorization to enter. You can let her in voluntarily, or I can call the police for a civil standby. She doesn't live here anymore. According to county records, she's the sole owner of this property, Martin said. She never transferred ownership. She never gave up residency. And changing the locks without her permission is illegal. Olivia's jaw clenched. She agreed to stay somewhere else. She was confused. We were helping. Then you won't mind her collecting her belongings. The door closed. I heard voices inside. Caleb saying something low and angry. Olivia responding. Then the chain rattled and the door opened. Caleb stood there. My son. His face was different somehow. Harder. Like he'd made a decision and was committed to it. Mom, he said, this didn't have to happen like this. You changed the locks, I said. My voice shook. You took my documents. You tried to access my accounts. I was trying to help organize your finances before you lost track of everything. You're getting older. You need support. I needed to be asked, I said. Martin stepped forward. Mr. Hartwell, we're here to execute a court order. Mrs. Hartwell will enter, collect her personal documents and essential belongings, and leave. The process will be supervised. I need you and your wife to remain in the living room while this happens. Caleb didn't move. You're tearing this family apart, Mom, over nothing. Over paperwork. Over $18,000, I said quietly. His face changed. Just for a second. Something flickered there. Fear, maybe, or anger. That was a misunderstanding, he said. The bank made an error. The bank has timestamps, Martin said. And IP addresses. And device fingerprints. Now please step aside. I walked past my son into my own house. It smelled different. Like someone else's life. Olivia's candles. Caleb's coffee. Not mine anymore. Martin followed me upstairs to my bedroom. The door was closed. I opened it. The room was empty. Not just cleaned out. Empty. No bed. No dresser. No nightstand. Just bare walls and carpet that showed outlines where furniture used to be. Where is everything? I whispered. Martin was already on his phone, taking photos. This is destruction of property. Mrs. Hartwell, was your furniture in this room 3 days ago? Yes. My bed. My grandmother's dresser. 40 years of furniture. He took more photos. The empty closet. The bare walls. The outlet where my lamp used to be. We went to the office. Same thing. Desk, gone. Filing cabinet, gone. Bookshelves, empty. They removed everything, Martin said. Everything you'd need to prove continued residency. My legs felt weak. This wasn't just locking me out. This was erasing me. Downstairs, Olivia called out. We donated it. She wasn't using it anymore. Martin leaned over the railing. You donated property belonging to the legal homeowner without her permission? She abandoned it when she left. She was forced out for one night. That's not abandonment. He turned to me. Mrs. Hartwell, do you have storage spaces? Attic? Basement? Garage? We checked the basement. Boxers. My boxers. My name on them in Sharpie, but when I opened them, they were empty. Just old newspapers stuffed inside. The garage was worse. My car was gone. Where's my car? I called down the stairs. Caleb appeared at the bottom. You shouldn't be driving anymore, Mom. We had it towed to a dealer. We'll get you something safer. That's auto theft, Martin said immediately. Where's the vehicle now? Caleb hesitated. And in that hesitation, I saw the truth. They'd sold it. Or traded it. Or done something to make sure I couldn't leave, even if I wanted to. Martin was on his phone again. I'm calling for a police civil standby. This has escalated beyond document retrieval. You're overreacting, Olivia said, but her voice had changed. Less confident now. A patrol car arrived 15 minutes later. Officer Hayes, young, careful, took notes while Martin explained. The court order, the missing furniture, the car. Hayes looked at Caleb. Sir, do you have documentation showing Mrs. Hartwell authorized disposal of her property? She verbally agreed, Caleb said. In writing? No, but then legally, this is her property, and she didn't authorize its removal. Hayes turned to me. Ma'am, do you have any documents stored here? Papers you need immediately. My office filing cabinet had everything. Birth certificate, social security card, insurance policies, bank statements. Where's that cabinet now? Hayes asked Caleb. Storage unit? Which one? Silence. Hayes's expression hardened. Mr. Hartwell, I need the location of that storage unit. Now, I don't have to tell you that, Caleb said. Actually, you do, Martin said. Judge Brennan's order specifically requires return of all documents. Refusing to disclose location is contempt. Something shifted in Caleb's face. like he'd just realized this wasn't going to work. That the story he'd built, the one where I was confused and he was helping, was falling apart. "Fine," he said. "It's at Storall on Highway 9, Unit 237. Hayes wrote it down. We're going there next. You're going to unlock it, and Mrs. Hartwell is going to retrieve her property." In the car heading to Storall, Martin made a call. "Judge Brennan, we have a situation." The respondents removed all of Mrs. Hartwell's furniture, belongings, and filed documents from the property. They claimed storage, but refused disclosure. "I need an expanded order." He listened. "Yes, Your Honor. Thank you." He hung up. "Brennan's issuing an order requiring full inventory of the storage unit and return of all property within 48 hours. And she's moving up the restraining order hearing to tomorrow morning." At Storall, Caleb unlocked Unit 237 with shaking hands. The locksmith had been right. This hadn't been sudden. Inside the unit, my bed, disassembled. My dresser. Boxers labeled Mom's papers. Bags of my clothes. My car keys hanging on a hook. Everything. They'd packed up my entire life. "When did you rent this?" Hayes asked. Caleb didn't answer. Martin found the rental agreement on a clipboard. April 15th. 4 months ago. The same week the bank attempts started. The same week Olivia came asking about account access. They'd been planning this since spring. Renting storage, testing my accounts, building their case that I was incompetent. And when they were ready, they'd executed it in one night. Officer Hayes took photos while I loaded boxers into Margaret's car. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely grip the cardboard. As we drove away, I looked back at the storage unit. At everything I owned, stuffed into a 10-by-10 space like I was already dead. "Tomorrow morning," Martin said quietly. 9 a.m. Brennan's courtroom. This ends tomorrow. But I knew it wouldn't end. Not really. Because even when the judge ruled, even when the law said I was right, I'd still know the truth. My son had tried to erase me. And he'd almost succeeded. The courthouse lobby smelled like floor wax and anxiety. I sat on a wooden bench outside courtroom 3B. Martin beside me reviewing papers one last time. Across the hall, Caleb and Olivia sat with their attorney. A woman in a sharp suit who kept whispering to them, taking notes. Caleb hadn't looked at me once. "All rise." The Honorable Judge Ellen Brennan presiding. We filed into the courtroom. The judge was younger than I expected, maybe 50, with steel gray hair pulled back tight. She looked at me, then at Caleb, her expression revealing nothing. "This is an emergency hearing regarding petition for protective order and property access. Mr. Reese, you filed on behalf of Mrs. Abigail Hartwell?" Martin stood. "Yes, Your Honor." "Summarize your petition." "Mrs. Hartwell is the sole legal owner of 427 Oakmont Drive. On the evening of December 10th, she was removed from the property by her son and daughter-in-law, who subsequently changed the locks without authorization. During her forced absence, multiple attempts were made to access her financial accounts from the property's IP address. We have documentation showing a 4-month pattern of attempted financial exploitation." Judge Brennan turned to the other attorney. "Ms. Carson?" responds. Ms. Carson stood. "Your Honor, Mr. and Mrs. Caleb Hartwell were acting in Mrs. Hartwell's best interests. She's 73 years old, living alone, showing signs of cognitive decline. They were attempting to organize her affairs before she hurt herself financially." "Did they have power of attorney?" Judge Brennan asked. "No, Your Honor. But did Mrs. Hartwell authorize removal of her property?" "Verbal authorization, Your Honor. She agreed to stay elsewhere temporarily." "For one night," I said. My voice came out stronger than I expected. Judge Brennan looked at me. "Mrs. Hartwell, you'll have your turn to speak. Mr. Reese, present your evidence." Martin approached the bench with the first folder. County records showing Mrs. Hartwell as sole property owner. Bank statements showing attempted unauthorized access. Ring camera footage showing Mr. Caleb Hartwell removing documents from the property at 11:47 p.m. on December 10th. And bank timestamps showing login attempts from the same address beginning at 2:41 a.m. on December 11th. He laid them out one by one. Judge Brennan studied each page. Ms. Carson, your client removed the petitioner's documents at midnight and 4 hours. Later, someone attempted to access her accounts from his residence. Explain that timeline. Ms. Carson hesitated. Coincidence, Your Honor? Mr. Hartwell was organizing paperwork. The bank attempts could have been external fraud. From his IP address? Judge Brennan's eyebrow lifted. That's quite a coincidence. She picked up another document. This is a storage unit rental agreement. Dated April 15th, 4 months before the alleged emergency removal. Mr. Reese, what am I looking at? Evidence of premeditation, Your Honor? The respondents rented storage 4 months ago, the same week the first test transactions appeared on Mrs. Hartwell's accounts. They were planning this removal long before any alleged cognitive concerns. Judge Brennan looked at Caleb. Mr. Hartwell, why did you rent a storage unit in April? Caleb's attorney whispered something to him. He stood. We were planning to help my mother downsize eventually. She's getting older. We wanted to be prepared. Prepared for what? For when she couldn't manage alone anymore. Did you discuss this with her? Silence. Mr. Hartwell, I asked you a question. No, Your Honor. We didn't want to upset her. Judge Brennan set down the papers. So you rented storage, tested her bank accounts, removed her from her home, changed her locks, and took her documents, all without her knowledge or consent, because you decided she couldn't manage alone. We were trying to help, Caleb said. His voice cracked slightly. Did you seek guardianship through legal channels? No, but did you petition the court for competency evaluation? We tried to schedule one privately. After you'd already locked her out? Judge Brennan's tone was flat. Mr. Hartwell, that's not how this works. You don't decide your parent is incompetent and take her property. There's a legal process for guardianship, which you ignored. Ms. Carson stood. Your Honor, my clients were acting out of genuine concern. Genuine concern doesn't involve changing locks and draining bank accounts. Judge Brennan pulled a paper toward her. Mrs. Hartwell, approach the bench. I stood, my legs unsteady. Martin walked with me. Judge Brennan looked at me directly. Mrs. Hartwell, do you understand why we're here today? Yes, Your Honor. Do you understand the documents Mr. Reese has presented? Yes. My son tried to take my house and my money. Why do you think he did that? I looked at Caleb. He was staring at the table. I don't know anymore. Maybe he thought I was too old to notice. Or too old to matter. Judge Brennan was quiet for a moment. Mrs. Hartwell, I've reviewed the evidence. You opened your own bank account. You hired your own attorney. You preserved documentation. You followed proper legal channels. Does that sound like someone who's incompetent? No, Your Honor. Neither does it to me. She turned back to her papers. Here's my ruling. The property at 427 Oakmont Drive remains in Mrs. Hartwell's sole ownership. She is granted immediate and unrestricted access. Mr. and Mrs. Caleb Hartwell have 48 hours to vacate the premises. Olivia made a small sound. Caleb's head snapped up. Your Honor, Miss Carson said quickly. They have nowhere to go on such short notice. They should have considered that before changing someone else's locks, Judge Brennan said. Additionally, all of Mrs. Hartwell's property currently in storage must be returned to 427 Oakmont Drive within the same time frame. Full inventory required. She signed something with sharp strokes. I'm also issuing a temporary restraining order. Mr. and Mrs. Caleb Hartwell are prohibited from contacting Mrs. Hartwell directly, from accessing any accounts in her name, and from making any claims regarding her mental capacity without court-supervised evaluation. She looked at Caleb. Young man, If you genuinely believed your mother needed help, you should have come to this court first. Instead, you tried to take everything from her. That's not help. That's exploitation. Martin squeezed my shoulder gently. Judge Brennan handed papers to the clerk. These orders are effective immediately. Violation will result in contempt charges. We'll reconvene in 30 days for a final hearing on permanent orders. She hit her gavel once. Court adjourned. I stood there, not quite believing it. Martin was smiling. You won, Mrs. Hartwell. Across the courtroom, Caleb finally looked at me. His face was pale. Olivia was crying quietly, her hand over her mouth. I should have felt triumph, victory, something. Instead, I just felt tired. Martin guided me toward the exit. We'll meet the locksmith at the house in an hour. Get your keys back. Change the locks again, but this time in your favor. At the door, I glanced back. Caleb was still staring at me. And I realized he'd never expected this. Never expected me to fight back. He'd thought I was too old, too confused, too weak. He'd been wrong. But as we walked out into the cold December air, I knew something he didn't. This wasn't over. Tomorrow, they'd have to face me at my own front door. The locksmith arrived at my house at 2 p.m. Martin and Officer Hayes stood on the porch with me, the court order folded in Martin's briefcase. I knocked on my own front door. Olivia opened it. Her eyes were red. You're really going to do this? The court gave you 48 hours, Martin said. We're here to supervise Mrs. Hartwell's entry and document retrieval per Judge Brennan's order. She stepped aside without another word. The house felt different, colder, like it knew what had happened inside these walls. Caleb sat at the kitchen table, laptop open. He didn't look up when I walked in. Where are my documents? I asked. Office, he said, flat, defeated. Martin followed me down the hall. The office door was closed. I opened it. My filing cabinet stood in the corner, the one that had been in storage. They'd brought it back already. I pulled open the top drawer. Folders. My folders? Birth certificate. Social security card. Insurance policies. Bank statements going back years. But something was wrong. The order was different. Someone had been through these. Martin pulled out his phone, started photographing. Check everything. Make sure nothing's missing. I went through each folder, found my birth certificate, my social security card. Then I opened the insurance folder and stopped. A paper I didn't recognize. A life insurance policy, dated April 20th, for $500,000. With Caleb listed as sole beneficiary. My hand started shaking. I didn't sign this. Martin took it, held it up to the light. That's your signature at the bottom. I never signed it. I never even saw this policy. He studied it closer. The notary stamp is from Henderson Notary Services on 5th Street. Do you know them? No. He took photos of every page. Mrs. Hartwell, someone forged your signature on a life insurance policy worth $500,000. That's insurance fraud and forgery. I felt sick. They hadn't just wanted my house and my bank accounts. They'd wanted me dead and paid for it. There's more, I said, pulling out another folder. A will, dated May 3rd, leaving everything to Caleb. House, accounts, personal property, everything. I didn't write this, I said. My real will is with my attorney. This isn't it. Martin's jaw tightened. Where's your actual will? Attorney named Patricia Wells. Downtown office. I did it in 2019. He was already dialing. Ms. Wells. Martin Reese. I'm representing Abigail Hartwell. Can you confirm you have her will on file? Pause. And the beneficiaries? Longer pause. Thank you. He hung up, looked at me. Your real will splits assets between Caleb, your sister, and a charity. This version cuts everyone out except your son. I found another paper. A quitclaim deed. Transferring my house to Caleb. Dated June 15th. My signature at the bottom. I never signed this either, I whispered. Martin photographed it. They created a complete paper trail. Fake will, fake deed, fake insurance policy. If you'd died, or if they'd gotten you declared incompetent, everything would have transferred to Caleb automatically. How did they do this? I asked. He pulled out his phone again, made another call. Henderson Notary Services. I need to verify a notarization from April 20th. He read the document number. Listened. I see. Can you confirm who presented the document? Another pause. His face darkened. Thank you. He turned to me. The notary remembers. A woman matching Olivia's description brought in documents. Said you'd already signed them at home due to mobility issues. She showed ID, but the notary never actually saw you. That's illegal, I said. Extremely. But it happens. Especially with elderly clients. Notaries assume family members are acting in good faith. He kept photographing. This is way beyond financial abuse now. This is conspiracy to commit fraud, forgery, identity theft. I heard footsteps. Caleb stood in the doorway. You went through my filing cabinet? I said. I was organizing it. Like I said, you created fake documents? I held up the insurance policy. $500,000, Caleb. With you as beneficiary. I never signed this. His face didn't change. You did. In April. You just don't remember. The notary never saw me. You signed it at home. Olivia took it in. That's illegal, Martin said. Notarization requires the signer to be physically present. Caleb's jaw clenched. She was having a bad day. We didn't want to stress her out. Or she never agreed to it at all, Martin said. Mr. Hartwell, we're adding insurance fraud and forgery to the complaint? Something flickered in Caleb's eyes. You can't prove I forged anything. Actually, we can. Martin held up the policy. Forensic document analysis. We'll compare this signature to Mrs. Hartwell's known signatures. If it's forged, we'll prove it. I pulled out more folders. Found a power of attorney document. Also dated April. Also notarized by Henderson Services. Giving Caleb full control over my finances and medical decisions. I never signed this either, I said. Martin added it to the pile. That's 3 forged documents. All notarized improperly. All designed to give your son complete control. Caleb was backing toward the door. Mom, you're confused? We did all this together. You agreed. Then why don't I remember? I asked. Because you're 73 years old and your memory isn't what it used to be. There it was again. The script. I'm old. Therefore, I'm wrong. Mrs. Hartwell's memory is fine, Martin said. She remembered her attorney's name. She remembered when she last updated her will. She remembers these documents don't exist in her records because she never created them. Officer Hayes appeared behind Caleb. Everything okay in here? Mr. Hartwell was just leaving, Martin said. Caleb looked at me one last time. You're really going to destroy your own son over paperwork. You tried to steal my life? I said. That's not paperwork. He left. I heard him and Olivia talking in low, urgent voices down the hall. Martin kept photographing. The insurance policy. The fake will. The quitclaim deed. The power of attorney. This is premeditated. They spent months building a false legal framework. If it had worked, you'd have lost everything without ever knowing it happened. I thought about the storage unit rented in April. The bank attempts, starting the same week. The notary appointments. The forged signatures. This wasn't desperation. This was a plan. What happens now? I asked. I file amended complaints with the DA's office. Insurance fraud is a felony. So is forgery. We also contact the insurance company and invalidate this policy immediately. He looked at me. Mrs. Hartwell, your son could face criminal charges. Good, I said. And I meant it. We spent another hour going through every document, every folder, every piece of paper in that cabinet. Martin photographed everything suspicious. By the end, we had 17 forged or falsified documents. 17 times they'd signed my name without permission. As we left, Olivia was packing boxers in the bedroom. Caleb's car was already half loaded. They had 48 hours to get out. And after that, they'd have to answer for every fake signature, every forged document, every lie they'd built on my name. The evidence was clear now. The timeline was clear. And the truth couldn't be changed. The second hearing was scheduled for 9 a.m. on a Thursday. I walked into courtroom 3B with Martin, carrying a folder thick with evidence. Caleb and Olivia sat at the defendant's table with Ms. Carson. Caleb's face was drawn. He'd aged 10 years in 2 weeks. Judge Brennan entered. We all stood. Be seated. We're here for final hearing on the protective order and to address new evidence of fraud. She looked at Martin. Mr. Reese, you filed amended complaints? Yes, Your Honor. 17 forged documents were discovered in Mrs. Hartwell's filing cabinet. Life insurance policy, will, power of attorney, quitclaim deed, all bearing Mrs. Hartwell's signature, none of which she authorized. Judge Brennan's expression hardened. You're alleging forgery? Yes, Your Honor. We've submitted the documents for forensic analysis. Additionally, the notary service confirmed Mrs. Hartwell was never physically present for notarization, which violates state law. Ms. Carson? Response. Ms. Carson stood slowly. Your Honor, my clients maintain Mrs. Hartwell did sign these documents, but has forgotten due to memory issues. Then they should have no problem with forensic analysis, Judge Brennan said. Mr. Reese, what did the analysis show? Martin approached the bench with a report. The forensic document examiner compared signatures on the disputed documents to Mrs. Hartwell's known signatures from bank records, her driver's license, and her 2019 will. The conclusion is clear. The signatures on all 17 documents are inconsistent with her natural hand. Several show hesitation marks and pressure variations indicating tracing or simulation. He laid out comparison photos. Even I could see the difference. My real signature had a flowing quality. The forged ones looked stiff, careful. Judge Brennan studied them. These don't match. No, Your Honor. Someone attempted to replicate Mrs. Hartwell's signature repeatedly over several months. She looked at Caleb. Mr. Hartwell, who had access to your mother's personal documents between April and December. Caleb glanced at his attorney. She nodded slightly. I did, he said. I was organizing her paperwork. Did you sign any documents in her name? Silence. Mr. Hartwell, I asked you a direct question. I may have signed a few things, just to move the process along. She'd already agreed verbally. Verbal agreement doesn't authorize forgery, Judge Brennan said. Her voice was ice. You signed your mother's name to a life insurance policy, making yourself the sole beneficiary of $500,000. She wanted me to have it. Then why forge her signature? Why not have her sign it herself? Caleb's mouth opened, closed. He had no answer that wouldn't incriminate him further. Judge Brennan turned to the next document. Bank records show login attempts from your IP address, coinciding exactly with the times you removed Mrs. Hartwell's documents. The forensic report shows 17 forged signatures. The storage unit was rented 4 months before the alleged emergency. Mr. Hartwell, this isn't a family misunderstanding. This is systematic fraud. Olivier was crying quietly. Caleb stared at the table. Your Honor, Ms. Carson said, my clients are willing to accept full responsibility and make restitution. Restitution for what? Judge Brennan asked. For attempting to steal their mother's house? Her life savings? For creating fake documents that would have transferred everything to them upon her death or incapacitation? What dollar amount covers that betrayal? I don't want you to miss what happens next. Subscribe so you can find stories like this again. Because what Judge Brennan said next changed everything. I'm making the restraining order permanent, she said. Mr. and Mrs. Caleb Hartwell are prohibited from contacting Mrs. Hartwell, entering her property, or making any claims regarding her finances or mental capacity. Violation will result in immediate arrest. She signed the order with harsh strokes. Additionally, I'm referring this case to the District Attorney's Office for Criminal Prosecution. The evidence supports charges of forgery, fraud, identity theft, and elder financial abuse. Those are felonies in this state. Caleb's head snapped up. Your Honor, please, you had months to do this correctly, Judge Brennan said. If you genuinely believed your mother needed help, you could have petitioned this court for guardianship. We have procedures for that. Instead, you forged documents, changed locks, and attempted to steal everything she owned. That's not concern. That's crime. She turned to me. Mrs. Hartwell, the property at 427 Oakmont Drive is yours free and clear. All accounts are frozen against unauthorized access. Your real will remains in effect. The forged documents are void. Thank you, Your Honor. I'm also ordering Mr. and Mrs. Hartwell to attend financial counseling and to provide full accounting of any funds taken from your accounts during this period. If any money is missing, they will repay it with interest. She looked at Caleb one last time. Young man, you tried to erase your mother from her own life. You failed. The law protects people, even from their own children. Especially from their own children. She hit her gavel. Court adjourned. Mrs. Hartwell, the bailiff will provide you with certified copies of all orders. Keep them safe. I stood. My legs felt weak. Martin was smiling. It's over. You're protected. Across the courtroom, Caleb was bent over the table, his shoulders shaking. Olivia had her hand on his back. Ms. Carson was packing her briefcase quickly. I should have felt victory. Relief. Something triumphant. Instead, I just felt empty. That was my son. The boy I'd raised. The one I'd worked 2 jobs to support. And he'd tried to steal everything from me. Martin guided me toward the exit. As we passed their table, Caleb looked up. Mom, he said. His voice cracked. I'm sorry. I stopped, looked at him, at the tears on his face. You're not sorry you did it, I said quietly. You're sorry you got caught. His face crumpled. I walked out. In the hallway, Martin handed me the certified orders. These are legally binding. If they contact you, call the police immediately. If they come near your property, call me. You're safe now. Safe. The word felt strange. I'd won. The judge had ruled in my favor. The documents were void. The house was mine. But I'd lost something too. Something I couldn't get back with court orders or forensic reports. I'd lost the belief that my son loved me more than he loved my money. And no judge could fix that. I stood in my living room 3 weeks later. The house was quiet. Mine again. The locks had been changed. Martin had supervised that himself. New keys, new deadbolts, new sense of security. The storage unit was empty. Everything had been returned. My bed, my dresser, my grandmother's quilt folded at the foot of the bed where it belonged. The bank had corrected everything. New account numbers, enhanced security, mandatory in-person verification for any changes. Denise had personally walked me through each step. The forged documents were with the DA's office. The insurance company had voided the fake policy and flagged Caleb's name in their system. My real will was filed with the court. The house deed showed only my name. Nothing had been transferred. Nothing had been lost. Legally, I'd won everything. But some mornings I still woke up wondering if Caleb would knock on the door. if he'd apologize, if there was something I could have done differently. Then I'd remember the timestamps, the forged signatures, the storage unit rented in April, and I'd know the truth. This hadn't been a mistake. It had been a plan. Margaret came by most afternoons. We'd sit on the porch with coffee, not talking much. She'd been there through all of it. The Ring camera footage that started everything. The rides to the bank, the courthouse, the lawyer's office. She'd never once said "I told you so," even though she'd warned me about Olivia years ago. "You doing okay?" she asked one Thursday. "I'm here," I said. "That's something." The DA had called last week. They were moving forward with charges. Forgery, fraud, elder abuse. Caleb and Olivia had hired a criminal attorney. There'd be a trial, probably. Months of waiting, more courtrooms, more evidence, more of my life laid out for strangers to examine. But that was fine, because every document, every timestamp, every piece of evidence told a story they couldn't change. I'd kept the receipts, not just the bank statements and the Ring camera footage, everything. The court orders, the forensic reports, the notary records, the storage unit agreement. 17 forged documents, each one dated and photographed. Truth doesn't disappear when someone decides you're too old to matter. It just waits, patient, quiet, until someone's willing to look. My phone rang sometimes. Unknown numbers. I never answered. The restraining order was clear. Any contact, and they'd be arrested. Martin had made sure of that. Once, I saw Caleb's car drive past the house. Slow. Like he was checking to see if I was home. I'd called the police immediately. Officer Hayes had come, taken a report, reminded me I had every right to feel safe in my own home. The car never came back. People at church asked questions. Gentle ones. "How are you doing, Abigail? We heard about your troubles." I'd smile, thank them, and say I was fine. Because I was. Fine wasn't happy, but it was honest. Some of them probably thought I'd been too harsh. That family should forgive. That Caleb was just trying to help and I'd overreacted. Let them think it. I knew what had happened. The judge knew. The bank knew. The evidence knew. And that was enough. One afternoon, I went through my filing cabinet. The real one. With the real documents. Birth certificate dated 1952. Social Security card worn soft at the edges. Marriage license from 1973. Divorce papers from 1998. Caleb's birth certificate, tiny footprints stamped in the corner. I held that one for a long time. The baby in those footprints had needed me once, had trusted me, had believed I'd always be there. Somewhere along the way, he'd stopped seeing me as his mother and started seeing me as an asset. I didn't know when that happened. Maybe when his father left. Maybe when money got tight. Maybe when Olivia whispered in his ear that I was getting older, forgetting things, wouldn't notice if they just organized a little. Or maybe he'd always been capable of this, and I'd just never wanted to see it. I put the birth certificate back in the folder, closed the drawer. Some things you can't fix. Some relationships can't be saved. And that's not failure. That's survival. The house settled around me in the evening quiet. My house, my name on the deed, my furniture, my life. They'd tried to take it, tried to erase me, tried to make me disappear while I was still breathing. But I'd fought back, with evidence, with lawyers, with the truth, and I'd won. Not because I was young or strong or powerful, but because I'd refused to let them gaslight me into believing I was confused. Because I'd trusted what I knew instead of what they told me. Because I'd asked for help instead of suffering in silence. Because I'd kept the receipts. I sat on my porch that evening, watching the sun set over Oakmont Drive. The street looked the same as it had 30 years ago. Same trees. Same mailboxes. Same quiet suburbia. But I was different. I'd learned something these past weeks. Something I wished I'd never had to learn, but was glad I knew. Being old doesn't mean being helpless. Being trusting doesn't mean being foolish. And being someone's mother doesn't mean accepting their betrayal. I had my house, my accounts, my dignity, my name on every document that mattered. They hadn't taken those. They'd tried. They'd planned. They'd forged and lied and manipulated. But in the end, the truth was louder than their lies. And I was still here, still standing, still fighting, still Abigail Hartwell, 73 years old, sole owner of 427 Oakmont Drive, competent and clear and absolutely done being underestimated. I stayed quiet until I didn't, and that made all the difference. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and if you've ever lived through something like this. Because you're not alone, and you're not too old to fight back.